How Obsidian changed how I think. Now, when I first started off using Obsidian, I didn't start using it to improve my thinking. I was just experimenting and I basically started using it because I wanted a better place to keep all of my notes. So at that time, I thought that notes were just storage and somewhere to save ideas, and maybe I would come back to those notes later. But over months of daily use, something subtle changed. I wasn't just sorting thoughts anymore, I was actually working through them. In this video, I want to explain how Obsidian slowly changed how I think, plan, and make decisions, not through features or systems, but through consistent writing over time. Now, this is a simple vault which has barely been used and it has just 3 folders and some random notes in here, and you can also see the graph view. So this hasn't been used much, and I'm going to use this to show you how you can plan your thinking with Obsidian and based on my experience. Before Obsidian, most of my thinking happened mentally. The ideas looped and decisions felt heavier than they needed to be. Problems stayed vague. And I would just think about something without even fully resolving it. But once I started writing daily in Obsidian, my thinking moved out of my head and onto the page. And that is what Obsidian is basically here for. And that is why it was designed, keeping in mind that the thoughts need to be captured. The people that use Obsidian are going to come over here, and what we need to focus on is capturing their thoughts. And that is the basic, you can say, function of Obsidian. That is what it aims to do. It wants people to come over here and open up a note or open up a daily note and come here and start writing down their thoughts. That is why it does not provide any kind of distraction in the terms of its dashboards and features and any displayed features. It does not offer flashy categorization of your different notes. It does not offer any extensive templates or all that kind of stuff. So it does not want you to get distracted. All it wants is for you to come up here, open up your note, and start writing away and just write and capture all of those thoughts going on inside of your brain. And that is exactly what happened with me as I started writing more and more notes. I started developing a habit where those thoughts started linking together, and then I started linking them more easily and naturally, and then I could see how those links played out, or I could visually see the connections between those notes in the graph view over here. And that is how, once I started writing daily in Obsidian, my thinking actually moved out of my head and onto the page. So I would write about it, and all my thoughts came out of my brain onto the page over here. In writing, in text, I could see all my ideas, and that alone reduced mental pressure. So when thoughts are visible, they stop fighting for attention. And with the graph view over here, even your thoughts are visible in the notes, and then the thoughts are visible here in the graph view, and then the connections between those thoughts are also visible, which makes it so satisfying, and it really puts your brain at ease. Also, writing down my thoughts made it more honest as well. Whatever you are thinking in your head, sometimes it feels messy, but sometimes it feels clean and logical. But when you write it down on a paper or when you note it in text, the writing exposes reality. And when I wrote down ideas, I noticed that there were gaps in my reasonings. I noticed that there were contradictions as well, and then there were also a lot of unclear assumptions. Now, realizing this or coming to terms with all of these deficiencies in my thought process or in my ideas was not easy, and that wasn't comfortable, but it was useful for me. So I noticed all of these gaps in reasoning, in the contradictions and the unclear assumptions, and I didn't notice them all at first. I used to write and I kept writing and I went over them. I wrote down 2-liner reviews for all of my notes, and then I noticed this habit that there are gaps and there are these contradictions and all of that. So I noticed that when I was regular in writing, and then I went over them, and then I found that out. And when I found it out, it was a bit uncomfortable, but I was so happy that I actually made this discovery, and it was so useful for me because I had the opportunity to correct myself now. So the writing forced clarity, not because I had better answers, but because vague thinking couldn't hide anymore. Everything was out in the open. It was loud and clear. It was right in front of me in text. I could see everything, and then I could see those gaps. I could see those mistakes. And then when I saw all that, I got really excited and I knew that I was on the path to a lot of improvement. Before Obsidian, I often waited until my thoughts felt ready and I created sentences and I wanted to really shape my thoughts before writing them down. But when I started using Obsidian, it removed all that pressure related around my idea, and the notes didn't need to be finished. They could be incomplete or messy or temporary. And that is something I absolutely learned with Obsidian. So Obsidian removed that pressure and I started thinking in progress instead of waiting for certainty or instead of waiting for any kind of a clarity of what I want to write. I just started writing down. So I just came here and I opened up my note and I just started noted them down messily, imperfectly, and incomplete sentences. I would note down maybe just 2 words of a thought and I just noted down, and that really changed everything for me. If you go to this symbol and you click here, you get a daily note, and it has the date over here as the title, and then down here is absolutely blank, which it isn't for now because I added this, but it's absolutely blank, and you start taking your note. So these daily notes really changed everything for me. They became more than just a log, which usually is used for, and I did think that it was going to be a log, and I'm just going to log in and I'm just going to write down any daily things, any daily observations, or anything like that. It was just basically going to be a daily log for me, which I started off as, but it became way more than a log. It actually became a place where I could think out loud and I could plan lightly and I could reflect in a very honest way, and I didn't have to worry about any kind of judgment or any kind of messiness or any imperfections or any mistakes. I could reflect honestly and I could plan and I could write down everything. And over time, what I could see was that I noticed which days felt clearer and some days felt scattered, and then I also saw particular notes or ideas that actually moved forward. And some days you could even say that some days moved forward because some days there was more progress and I could see that day moving forward as well. So some days were clear and then some were a bit scattered, and then with some I could actually move forward. And this wasn't actually productivity tracking, it was more of awareness. I could be more aware of my thoughts, I could be more aware of what kind of notes I am taking and how beneficial they are and how each day is progressing or even not progressing. So this wasn't tracking, but it was more of giving me some kind of awareness. And it was less technical, but more helpful in a way of learning about myself. This awareness changed how I approached any future days, and when I became more aware of my patterns, then I approached other days a bit differently according to what I needed based on my habits and my system. Now, with Obsidian, my thinking actually became slower, which is not something bad because the thinking became a lot deeper. So, Obsidian doesn't rush you. There aren't any notifications, as you can see here, there aren't any feeds. This is all there is, and there is also no pressure to optimize as well. So, thinking did slow down, but the slower thinking actually led to better questions and more deliberate decisions and less reactive work. So I stopped trying to solve everything immediately and I gave my thoughts space to mature. And as I kept linking my notes, I linked them naturally and I tried a lot not to force any connections. So I did some limited linking, and when I saw the graph view, I could see it develop over time. And I also noticed something very important where I noticed that the ideas didn't disappear actually. So when I had any ideas and I linked them, those ideas didn't disappear. In fact, they actually returned. So when I traced any idea back to its origin, those ideas actually returned, and I didn't have to trace them back myself. When I talk about tracing them back, I didn't have to do that myself because once the idea went around and around, it reconnected to the main origin here actually. So the idea went around, connected with other nodes, and then it came right back to the start where it originated. So the old notes connected to the new ones, and the original thoughts actually resurfaced with even better context. And when you reach back to an original idea, or when a thought resurfaces with even better context, you see full circle. You see the whole thought process come full circle, and it is just such an amazing process. This showed me that ideas improve with time and clarity is cumulative. Obsidian made growth visible to me in graph view with the notes, and when I reviewed my notes, I actually saw that growth. I compared my notes, my earlier notes to my later notes, and I actually saw that growth. With Obsidian, my decision making became calmer as well. So whenever decisions felt heavy, I wrote them down. I wrote down any options, any concerns, and any trade offs. And then seeing those decisions in text or written down, it actually reduced the emotional weight, and then many decisions solved themselves once they were written down. The act of writing became part of thinking and not something separate. So Obsidian didn't make me smarter, it made my thinking visible. My writing daily, revisiting thoughts, and letting ideas evolve, thinking became calmer and more intentional. So Obsidian, as you can see over here, it really isn't powerful because of features, but it's powerful because it encourages reflection. And over time, reflection changes how you think quietly, gradually, and permanently. That is how thinking was changed for me with Obsidian, and I hope thinking with Obsidian turns out well for you too.